Take a long look at this plant right here. Yellowing leaves, drooping stem, spots forming on the foliage. If you walked by this in someone's garden, you'd probably think it had been neglected for weeks, maybe months. You'd think nobody cared about this plant at all. But I want to tell you something that is going to completely change the way you think about your garden. This plant was watered every single day, faithfully, lovingly, by someone who was trying their absolute hardest to keep it alive. And it is dying because of it. I have been a gardener for over 30 years. I have grown food, flowers, trees, herbs, and everything in between. I have made just about every mistake there is to make in a garden, some of them more than once. But the mistake I am here to talk about today is the one I see most often. The one that quietly destroys gardens across this country every single season. The one that gardeners almost never catch in time because the signs look like something else entirely. Overwatering, the #1 killer of garden and houseplants in America. More plants die from too much water than from drought, disease, pests, or poor soil combined. I am not exaggerating. I have watched it happen in my own garden, in my neighbors' gardens, and in the gardens of people who have been growing for decades. Here is what we are going to cover today. I am going to explain exactly what overwatering does to your plant at the root level, the science of it in plain language, because once you understand what is happening underground, you will never look at a drooping plant the same way again. I am going to walk you through every single warning sign your plants send before they reach the point of no return. I am going to tell you which plants are the most vulnerable, because some of them will surprise you. I am going to go through the biggest mistakes I see gardeners make, and I am going to show you exactly how to water properly so this never happens in your garden again. And at the end, I am going to give you a step-by-step rescue plan for plants that have already been overwatered, because I want you to know it is not always too late. This is the most important gardening video I have made in years. So stay with me. Let's dig into this together. If you are new here, I am so glad you found this channel. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell. Every single week I bring you honest, experience-backed gardening content that I have spent 30 years learning. You do not want to miss what's coming up on this channel. What overwatering actually does to your plant. Before we talk about anything else, I need to clear up a misconception that almost every gardener has. And I had it too early on. When most people hear the word overwatering, they picture someone dumping a bucket of water over a plant. A flood. A one-time event. But that is not what overwatering is. Overwatering is not about volume. It is about frequency. It is about watering again and again before the soil has had enough time to partially dry out between sessions. It is about keeping the root zone in a state of persistent, unrelenting wetness. And here is why that matters so deeply, and I mean this at a biological level. Plant roots do not just absorb water. They also need to breathe. Every living root requires oxygen to function, and that oxygen comes from the tiny air pockets between soil particles. When soil is properly managed, watered, and then allowed to partially dry, those air pockets refill with oxygen as the moisture level drops. The roots get what they need. The whole system breathes. But when soil stays saturated constantly, those air pockets fill with water and stay filled. The roots are suddenly in an airless environment. They begin to suffocate. Scientists call this root hypoxia, and in heavy clay soil, it can begin within just 24 hours of overwatering. Now, and this is where the real danger begins. A suffocating root is a weakened root. And weakened roots are an open invitation to a group of water mold pathogens, primarily from the Pythium and Phytophthora families, that thrive in exactly these conditions. Wet soil, no oxygen, stressed plant tissue. These organisms move into the root system and begin breaking it down from the inside. The roots turn brown, then black. They become soft and mushy. They stop absorbing water. They stop taking up nutrients. Here is the painful irony, and this is the part that breaks gardeners' hearts when they finally understand it. The plant is now dying of drought and starvation while sitting in a pool of water. It is wilting. It is yellowing. And your instinct, the most natural instinct in the world, is to water it more. But more water at that point is like throwing fuel on a fire. I have talked to so many gardeners over the years who lost entire beds this exact way. They saw wilting, they reached for the hose, and they wondered why the plant kept getting worse no matter what they did. Now you know why. The wet-dry cycle your plants are asking for. Think about your garden soil the way you think about a sponge. When you water correctly, you saturate that sponge thoroughly and then you step back and wait. As the water moves down through the profile and evaporates from the surface, air is pulled back into the soil. Oxygen reaches the roots. The microbial life in your soil, the bacteria, the fungi, the earthworms, all of it functions the way it should. The roots breathe, expand, and grow stronger. Then, when the sponge has partially dried, not bone dry for most plants, but partially, you water deeply again. Saturate and dry. Saturate and dry. That rhythm is what a healthy root system runs on. When you interrupt that rhythm by never letting the drying phase happen, you are not giving your plants more of a good thing. You are eliminating something essential. That is the foundation of everything we are going to talk about today. Hold that image in your mind. If this is already changing the way you think about watering, go ahead and hit that like button for me right now. Takes 1 second, it helps this video reach more gardeners who need to hear this, and I genuinely appreciate every single one. The warning signs, and why gardeners keep misreading them. This section might be the most practically useful part of this entire video, because the warning signs of overwatering are sneaky. They look like other problems. They trick experienced gardeners. And when you misread them, which is incredibly easy to do, you make the situation dramatically worse. Let me walk you through each one. Warning sign number 1, yellowing leaves. This is the most common sign of overwatering, and also the most commonly misread. Yellow leaves send most gardeners down one of 3 wrong paths. They assume the plant needs fertilizer. They assume it needs more light. Or, the most dangerous assumption, they decide the plant must be thirsty and water it again. But here is what yellow leaves are actually telling you when the soil has been consistently moist. The roots are suffocating and beginning to rot. Damaged roots cannot absorb nutrients. The leaves literally starve from the inside out, turning yellow as the chlorophyll breaks down. More fertilizer will not fix this. More light will not fix this. More water absolutely will not fix this. The yellowing is a root problem disguised as a leaf problem, and it demands a root solution. Warning sign number 2, wilting despite wet soil. This one confuses people more than anything else, and I completely understand why. You look at your plant, drooping, wilting, looking absolutely miserable. You push your finger into the soil. It is wet. You think that makes no sense at all. But once you understand what we covered in section 1, it makes complete sense. The roots are damaged. They have lost their ability to pull water up through the plant even though water is all around them. The plant is wilting not because there is no water, but because the mechanism that moves water from soil to stem to leaf has been destroyed. More water is the last thing it needs. Warning sign number 3, soft or mushy stems at the base. Get into the habit of running your hand down the stem of your plants occasionally, all the way to the soil line. On a healthy plant, the stem should feel firm, sometimes almost woody at the base. On an overwatered plant, especially one grown in a container, you will often find softness or mushiness right at that point where the stem meets the soil. That is rot. That is pathogens that started in the roots working their way upward into the stem tissue. When you feel that, you are in a genuine race against time, and we will talk about what to do at the end of this video. Warning sign number 4, mold, algae, or fungus on the soil surface. Walk through your garden slowly sometime and look at the surface of your soil. Not the plants, the soil itself. Do you see a greenish tint? A white, powdery, or fuzzy growth? Maybe a thin film of something that was not there last week? That growth tells you the surface of your soil is staying wet long enough to support its own ecosystem of mold and algae. Healthy, properly managed soil does not give these organisms enough sustained moisture to take hold. When you see them, the topsoil is signaling that something below the surface is waterlogged and has been for a while. Warning sign number 5, leaves that feel soft and waterlogged. not crisp. Here is a distinction that will help you enormously in diagnosing what is wrong with a struggling plant. Leaves that are wilting from underwatering feel dry, papery, almost brittle. They crinkle slightly when you touch them. Leaves that are wilting from overwatering feel different entirely. They feel soft, heavy, almost swollen, sometimes slightly translucent, like the cell walls have broken down. If you gently squeeze a wilting leaf and it feels limp and wet rather than crisp and dry, that is your overwatering flag. Check the soil before you do anything else. Warning sign number 6. A sour or musty smell from the soil. Healthy garden soil has a smell, and it is one of the best smells in the world, rich, earthy, alive. That smell comes from a compound called geosmin produced by healthy soil bacteria. Overwatered, oxygen-depleted soil smells completely different. It smells sour, sometimes sulfurous, sometimes like decay or rot. The next time you are concerned about a plant, bend down and smell the soil at the base. Your nose will tell you things your eyes cannot see. Warning sign number 7. Blisters or water-soaked patches on leaves. This one is less common but worth knowing. Some plants, particularly succulents, begonias, and certain houseplants, develop a condition called edema when they are consistently overwatered. The cells in the leaves take in more water than they can handle and literally burst, creating raised, blister-like patches or water-soaked, translucent spots on the foliage. It looks almost like a disease, and many gardeners treat it as one. Spraying fungicide, adjusting light, trying all sorts of things. But it is a watering problem, pure and simple. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever seen one of these signs in your garden and misread it? I know I have more than once. Drop your story below. I read every single comment, and there is so much we can all learn from each other's experiences in this community. The plants most vulnerable to overwatering. Not every plant responds to overwatering the same way. Some are forgiving, they will bounce back quickly if you catch things early. Others will deteriorate so fast that by the time you notice the signs, the damage is already severe. Let me tell you which ones need the most careful, most deliberate watering. Succulents and cacti, the most overwatered plants on Earth. I will say this plainly. Succulents and cacti are the most overwatered plants in America, and it is not even close. These plants evolved in arid, semi-desert environments specifically to store water inside their own tissue. In their leaves, their stems, their roots. They are living water reservoirs. When you water them the way you would water a tomato plant or a petunia, you are giving them moisture they have absolutely no biological need for and no ability to process. Root rot sets in almost immediately. The leaves turn translucent, then soft and mushy. Then the plant collapses from the base up. The rule for succulents is simple. Water deeply, and then do not water again until the soil is completely, thoroughly, bone dry. In winter, many succulents need water only once every 3 to 4 weeks or less. Lavender, a Mediterranean plant in a well-meaning garden. I talked about lavender in a previous video, and I will say it again here. Lavender's number 1 enemy is wet roots. Lavender evolved on rocky, sun-baked hillsides along the Mediterranean coast. It has never known rich, constantly moist soil. It does not want it. In heavy or poorly draining soil with regular irrigation, lavender develops root rot within a season, sometimes faster. The plant will look fine right up until it suddenly doesn't. You'll notice it wilting on a cool morning when it should be perky, and by the time you realize what's happening, the roots are already gone. Plant lavender in your best draining soil, never water it on a fixed schedule, and once established, trust that it wants to be dry far more than it wants to be wet. Mediterranean herbs, rosemary, thyme, oregano, and sage. Everything I just said about lavender applies equally to this group. Rosemary, thyme, oregano, and sage are all drought-adapted plants from the same general region of the world. They evolved in thin, rocky, fast-draining soil under intense sun. In a garden bed that gets regular water, especially a vegetable garden where you're irrigating frequently for tomatoes and peppers, these herbs can really struggle. They need to be placed deliberately in a spot with excellent drainage and full sun, and they need to be on a completely different watering schedule than your thirstier crops. The single best thing you can do for these herbs is learn to ignore them. Water them, let the soil dry completely, and then let it sit dry for a while before you water again. Trees and shrubs, the slow, invisible damage. This is the category that breaks gardeners' hearts the most, because the damage is so gradual and so invisible until it is too late. When you water a young tree or shrub too frequently, the roots never have a reason to grow deep. They stay shallow, clustered near the surface where the water always is. The tree looks perfectly healthy for a season, maybe two. It might even look vigorous. And then you get a dry summer or a wind event or just the natural stress that comes with time, and the tree fails. It declines. It drops branches. Sometimes it falls over. Because the root system that should have been deep and anchored and strong never developed that way. For trees and shrubs, the rule is deep and infrequent. Water slowly and thoroughly to push moisture down into the soil profile, and then let significant time pass before you water again. You are training those roots to go looking for water. That search is what makes them strong. Tomatoes blossom end rot, cracking, and inconsistent moisture. Tomatoes are water-hungry plants, and that creates a trap for gardeners. Because we know they need moisture, we tend to keep the soil consistently wet. But tomatoes do not want constant moisture, they want consistent moisture. There is a meaningful difference. When soil swings repeatedly between dry and saturated, tomatoes develop blossom end rot. That dark, sunken, leathery patch on the bottom of the fruit that ruins a tomato you have spent months growing. The fruit also splits and cracks when the plant absorbs a heavy surge of water after a dry spell. The cell walls literally burst from the rapid influx. The solution is even, steady moisture maintained through deep watering and heavy mulching. Not daily shallow watering that keeps the surface wet while the roots swing between feast and famine. Container plants, the highest risk environment. Every plant grown in a container is at higher risk of overwatering than the same plant grown in the ground, and the reason is straightforward. In the ground, excess water disperses into surrounding soil. In a pot, it has nowhere to go. It pools at the bottom of the container, saturating the lowest portion of the root zone permanently. This is made even worse when pots are sitting in saucers or trays filled with standing water. A habit that seems helpful but is actually one of the most common ways container plants are killed. Always empty your saucers after watering. Ensure water drains freely from the bottom of every pot. And always use a potting mix specifically designed for containers, never garden soil, which compacts in pots and drains like concrete. If you know a gardener who has been struggling with their plants and cannot figure out why, please share this video with them right now. This might be exactly the answer they have been looking for. Sharing costs you nothing, and it could genuinely save someone's garden. I would really appreciate it. The biggest overwatering mistakes gardeners make. Alright, this is the section where I want you to really lean in and be honest with yourself. Because most overwatering does not come from carelessness. It comes from habits that feel responsible. Habits that feel like good gardening. Let's go through them. Mistake number 1, watering on a fixed schedule. This is the root cause of more overwatering than anything else I can name. Watering every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday or every morning before work, regardless of what the weather has done, regardless of what the temperature is, regardless of whether the soil is already moist. Your garden does not care what the calendar says. It does not care about your schedule. It cares about what condition the soil is actually in right now. A watering routine that made perfect sense during a dry heat wave in August is going to drown your plants during a cool, cloudy week in September. Check before you water. Every single time. Make that your new rule and stick to it. Mistake number 2, shallow, frequent watering. Short, light watering sessions, a quick spray over the surface each morning, create a very specific and very damaging problem. They keep the top inch or 2 of soil consistently moist while the deeper soil stays dry. Roots follow moisture, so they stay near the surface where the water is. Shallow roots mean a plant that is perpetually stressed, vulnerable to heat, drought, and wind damage because it has no depth to draw from. The right approach is to water deeply and less often. Get the water down 6 to 8 inches into the soil profile. That drives the roots downward. Deep roots are strong roots. Deep roots are resilient roots. A plant with a deep root system can handle a mist watering. A plant with shallow roots cannot handle anything. Mistake number 3: running irrigation after rain. I have seen automatic irrigation systems running while it was actively raining outside. I say that with no judgment whatsoever, because if you set a timer and walked away, you may not even know it happened. But this is a real and costly mistake. If you have an automatic irrigation system, one of the best investments you can make is a simple rain sensor that shuts the system off when meaningful precipitation has occurred. They cost very little and pay for themselves in plant health within one season. And if you are hand watering, check the forecast. Always. Even an inch of rainfall can mean your garden does not need you for several days. Mistake number 4: planting in poor draining soil and hoping for the best. You can water at the perfect frequency with perfect technique and still end up with overwatered plants if your soil does not drain properly. Heavy clay soil is the most common culprit. It holds water like a bathtub, compacts. It stays saturated for days after a watering or a rainstorm. And if you are planting directly into dense, unamended clay and then watering on any kind of regular schedule, your plants are struggling even when they appear okay. The solution is to amend deeply, work generous quantities of compost, aged organic matter, and in severe cases coarse grit or perlite into the soil before you plant. This is not a one-time fix. It is a multi-season commitment to building better soil. But it is the foundation that everything else in a healthy garden depends on. Mistake number 5: watering the leaves instead of the roots. This one creates 2 problems at the same time. When you water overhead, spraying the foliage rather than directing water at the base of the plant, you keep the leaves wet for extended periods. Wet leaves in warm, humid conditions are an open invitation to fungal diseases. Powdery mildew, black spot, early blight, botrytis, all of them flourish on consistently moist foliage. At the same time, much of that overhead water never reaches the root zone at all. It evaporates from the leaves or rolls off onto the soil far from where the roots are. Direct water at the base of your plants at soil level. If you must use overhead irrigation, run it in the early morning so foliage has the entire day to dry before temperatures drop at night. Mistake number 6: not adjusting for the season. A plant's water needs change dramatically through the year, and many gardeners water the same way in October as they do in July. In summer heat, a plant may need deep watering twice a week. In cool fall weather, once every 10 days might be more than enough. In winter, outdoor plants may need almost no supplemental water at all, especially if they have gone dormant or semi-dormant. Houseplants slow their growth significantly in lower winter light and need far less water than in summer. Adjust your watering habits as the seasons change. The calendar does not tell you when to water. The soil does. The plant does. The weather does. Listen to those things. Mistake number 7: treating all plants the same. This one catches a lot of gardeners, particularly those who are newer to growing a diverse range of plants. You cannot water your rosemary the same way you water your hydrangea. You cannot water your cactus the same way you water your tomato. Different plants evolved in completely different environments with completely different water availability. Grouping plants by their water needs, a principle called hydrozoning, is one of the most practical things you can do for your garden. Put your drought-tolerant plants together. Put your moisture-loving plants together. Water each zone according to what those plants actually need. It makes your watering more efficient, your plants healthier, and your life considerably easier. We are almost at the end, and I have one more section that I think is going to be the most valuable thing we covered today. How to actually rescue a plant that has already been overwatered. Do not go anywhere. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now. Hit subscribe and the bell so you never miss a video from this channel. How to know when to water, the methods that actually work. After everything we have covered, let me give you the practical tools to get this right going forward. These are the exact methods I have used for 30 years. The finger test: simple, free, and reliable. Push your index finger into the soil to a depth of about 2 inches. If it feels moist at that depth, do not water. If it feels dry, water deeply. For most vegetables and flowering annuals, 2 inches is the threshold. For drought-tolerant perennials, lavender, and herbs, go 3 to 4 inches. For moisture-loving plants like astilbe or hostas, you can water when the top inch begins to feel barely moist. This test costs absolutely nothing, takes 5 seconds, and is the single most reliable watering guide I know. Make it a habit. Do it every single time before you pick up the hose. The wooden skewer method. Push a long bamboo skewer, the kind sold for kebabs, deep into the soil all the way down into the root zone. Leave it for 10 seconds, then pull it out. If soil clings to it and the skewer feels cold and damp, the root zone is still wet. Do not water. If it comes out clean and dry, time to water. This method is especially valuable for large containers where your finger cannot reach the depth where the roots actually live. A soil moisture meter. For around $10 to $15 at any garden center or hardware store, you can buy a simple soil moisture probe. Push it into the soil and it gives you an instant moisture reading on a scale from dry to wet. It is not glamorous technology, but it is accurate and enormously useful, especially for gardeners who are still building their instincts or working with containers where the surface can look and feel dry while the lower soil is saturated. I still use mine regularly, and I have been doing this for 3 decades. The weight test for containers. This one takes a little practice but becomes second nature quickly. Pick up your potted plant right after watering it and feel the weight. Really feel it. Now pick it up again 3 or 4 days later and notice the difference. A well-watered pot is noticeably heavy. A pot that is ready for water is noticeably lighter. Once you have done this a few times with the same pot, you will be able to tell by feel alone whether watering is needed before you ever touch the soil surface. Read your plants every time you walk by. Your plants communicate constantly, and most of us walk past them without really seeing them. Make a practice of actually looking every time you pass through your garden. Not a worried, anxious inspection, just a relaxed, observant glance. Are the leaves holding their posture? Are the stems upright? Is the color vibrant and even? These are your baseline indicators of health. When something shifts slightly, when a leaf looks a touch less firm in the afternoon, when a stem leans a little more than usual, that is your early warning. Check the soil. 9 times out of 10 you will get your answer right there. Which of these methods are you going to start using in your garden? The finger test? The skewer? A moisture meter? Drop it in the comments below. And if you have a method of your own that works, share it. This community is full of experienced, creative gardeners, and I love seeing what you all come up with. How to rescue an overwatered plant, step by step. Alright, here is what you came here for. You have a plant that has been overwatered. Maybe it is just beginning to show signs. Maybe it is in pretty bad shape. I want you to know right now that it is not always too late. I have brought plants back from the absolute edge. Here is exactly how. Step 1. Stop watering immediately and assess. The moment you suspect overwatering, stop. Do not water again until the situation is fully under control. Move container plants to a spot with better air circulation. Increased airflow helps the soil dry out more quickly. Remove any saucers that might be holding standing water underneath the pot. For garden bed plants, if the soil around the plant is waterlogged, you can carefully loosen the surrounding soil with a fork to allow air in and improve drainage. Do not dig into the root zone, just the surrounding area. Then wait. Observe. Let the soil begin to dry before you do anything more. Step 2. Check the roots. For a container plant, gently slide the plant out of its pot. This will not harm it further, and the information you get from looking at the roots is worth it. Healthy roots are white or cream-colored, firm, and slightly fuzzy with tiny root hairs. Rotted roots are brown or black. They are mushy and soft when you press them between your fingers. They may smell like decay, because that is exactly what they are. For a garden plant, carefully excavate a small area near the base of the plant to expose some of the root system and assess what you are working with. Step 3. Remove every rotted root. This step is critical and you cannot be timid about it. Using clean, sharp scissors or pruning shears, cut away every single section of rotted root. Every piece. Do not leave any rotted tissue behind, because it will continue to spread pathogens to the healthy roots that remain. After each cut, wipe your blades with a cloth dampened with rubbing alcohol to prevent spreading the pathogen from one cut to the next. When you are finished, you should be looking at nothing but firm, healthy, light-colored root tissue. It may be significantly less root mass than you started with, and that is okay. A smaller but healthy root system is far better than a larger compromised one. Step 4. Treat the roots. After removing the rotted sections, rinse the remaining roots gently under room temperature water. Then treat with a fungicide. A copper-based fungicide works well and is widely available. Alternatively, look for a biological fungicide containing Trichoderma harzianum, a beneficial fungal organism that actively competes with and suppresses the pathogens that cause root rot. It is one of the most effective and most natural tools in the gardener's rescue kit. Follow the label directions for mixing and application. This step is not always necessary for very mild cases, but for any significant root rot, it can genuinely be the difference between a full recovery and continued decline. Step 5. Repot or replant in fresh, well-draining soil. Do not put a rescued plant back into the same soil environment it nearly died in. For container plants, wash the pot thoroughly with a diluted bleach solution, 1 part bleach to 9 parts water, to kill any lingering pathogens in the pot itself. Then fill it with fresh, high-quality potting mix. For garden plants, amend the planting area significantly with compost, perlite, or coarse material to improve drainage before replanting. Settle the rescued root system into its new medium and water just enough to eliminate air pockets around the roots. Not a deep watering. Just enough to settle things. Step 6. Give it time and adjust going forward. A rescued plant is a stressed plant. It is not going to bounce back overnight, and you need to resist the urge to help it along with fertilizer or extra attention. Give it a few weeks of very careful, conservative watering, using the finger test or a moisture meter every single time. Keep it out of intense direct sun during the recovery period if possible, as stressed roots cannot handle peak heat demand. You may see further leaf drop or yellowing before things improve. That is normal. The plant is reallocating resources to rebuilding its root system. When you begin to see firm new growth emerging, new leaves, new shoots, that is your signal that the roots are recovering. That new growth is one of the most satisfying things a gardener can see. If this rescue plan gave you hope for a plant you thought you had lost, please hit that like button before you go. And share this video with every gardener you know. This is exactly the kind of content I love making, and every share, every like helps me keep creating it for you. I would really appreciate it. Let's bring this home. Overwatering is not a beginner's mistake. It is not a careless mistake. It is a human mistake, and it comes from the best possible place. From love. From wanting so badly to give your plants what they need. From not wanting to let them down. But love without knowledge can cause real damage. And now you have the knowledge. After 30 years of getting my hands in the dirt, 30 years of wins and losses and lessons learned the hard way, the thing I know most deeply about plants is this. They want to be understood, not just cared for. They want you to listen to what they are actually asking for, not just do what feels right. And almost always what they are asking for is less than you think. Less water, more patience, more trust. The best gardeners I know are not the ones who do the most. They are the ones who observe the most. They walk slowly through their gardens. They touch the soil. They look at the leaves. They pay attention. And because they pay attention, they catch problems early, before a wrong habit becomes a dying plant. That can be you. Starting today. Starting right now. Check your soil before you water. Always. Trust the plant to tell you what it needs. Give it the wet-dry cycle it is designed for. And if you have a plant right now that you are worried about, describe what you are seeing in the comments. Tell me what is happening. Let's figure it out together right down there in the comment section. That is what this channel is for. That is what this community is for. And that is why I keep showing up every week. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It genuinely means everything. If this video helped you, please hit like before you close out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every week I bring you real, experience-backed gardening content that actually works in the real world. Share this with every gardener you care about. And leave me a comment. Tell me what you're going to do differently in your garden starting today. I will be down there reading and responding. Now go check your soil. Happy growing, everyone.